be seated. All right, Sergeant Rossi, would you resume the witness stand, please? All right, good afternoon again, Sergeant. You're reminded you're still under oath. Mr. Bailey, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sergeant, I think prior to the recess, we established the fact that one of the concerns after a homicide occurs is the notification of other possible related victims.
Yes, sir.
And that's something that your department, to your knowledge, first attended to sometime after 5 o'clock that morning.
As far as I know, yes, the detectives
Right.
did.
Now, there are other things that need to be looked after as quickly as possible when a homicide occurs, right?
Such as?
Well, notifying the detectives to get to the scene so they can detect,
Correct.
right? And in this case, you notified Detective 3, Ron Phillips, at exactly 1 a.m., according to your own records, that there had been a double homicide, and you told him who had been killed, didn't you?
I told him that was a possibility. That's who the victim was, yes, sir.
Yeah. And, well, there wasn't much doubt in your mind after Risky told you what he found in the house, was there?
I was pretty sure.
Okay. You said you didn't know he was calling from the house a little while ago, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
You didn't know that even though he told you he's looking at a picture of O.J. Simpson and a letter addressed to O.J. Simpson?
He didn't tell me that, sir.
Oh, he didn't tell you that?
No.
Oh. When did you first hear that from Officer Risky?
I didn't hear that from Risky.
To this very day?
No.
Okay. The word lithograph doesn't bring back any memories, is that right?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. How far away from Bundy does Officer Phillips live?
About 35 miles
Okay. In what community?
in the Santa Clarita Valley.
And Officer Furman lives down somewhere around Redondo Beach?
I'm not sure where Detective Furman lives.
Do you know Detective Mark Furman at all?
Yes, sir, I do.
How long have you been familiar with him?
About 4 years.
4?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you know him in 1989?
No, I didn't.
Did you know him in 1985?
No, sir.
Okay. When you talked to Phillips and he said, look, I'll take care of notifying Furman, you took him at his word and did not call Mark Furman, correct?
Correct.
All right. Did they give you, or did Phillips give you, any estimate as to when you might anticipate that he would arrive to take over the crime scene?
He told me he would get there as soon as possible.
As soon as possible?
Yes, sir.
Which turned out to be an hour and 10 minutes, right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Now, did he explain why it was necessary to meet Detective Furman at the station and then they both go to the crime scene?
No, he didn't.
Was it not plain to you that that arrangement would require that the later of the two would hold up the other one?
I didn't know that that was the plan.
Were you anxious to get them at the crime scene as soon as possible?
Yes, I was.
Would you explain to the court and jury the relationship between yourself as watch commander with respect to responsibilities and Sergeant Kuhn?
Sergeant Kuhn is a field supervisor.
I understand that. He arrived within apparently 10 or 15 minutes of Officer Risky and Officers McGowan and Wally, right?
Testifying.
Sustained. Question assumes facts that are not in evidence.
I'm sorry, I thought that he had told us that Officer Risky arrived at 12:15.
No.
When did Officer Risky arrive, according to your answer?
Officer Risky already testified to when it was he arrived.
Pardon me,
You
Your-
were talking about Sergeant Kuhn.
No. I'm talking about Risky
All right.
and Kuhn as related to Risky. When did Kuhn arrive, if you know?
Shortly after Officer Risky arrived.
If the crime log says 30 minutes after the hour, would you accept that?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Okay. When you say shortly, you mean minutes, hours? Can you help us any better than shortly?
Within a few minutes?
A few minutes. Okay. Now, when Sergeant Kuhn arrived, who was in charge of that crime scene?
Sergeant Kuhn.
So that if any transgressions were made upon the integrity of the crime scene, he would be the one responsible. True?
Until I got out there, Sergeant Kuhn was responsible for that crime scene.
Okay. Now, when you got there, who was in charge until the detectives arrived?
I was.
If Detective Furman, who was a slightly lower grade than you are, as I understand it, had arrived alone before Phillips, would he nonetheless have been in charge of the crime scene by virtue of being a detective?
Yes, sir.
And would he have then taken full responsibility for whatever happened there?
Yes, sir.
And if he'd issued directions, would you have felt bound to follow?
Yes, I would.
But whereas they arrived together, Detective Phillips, of course, being a third grade, is superior in rank anyway, is he not?
Yes, he is.
And by virtue of being a detective, nonetheless, has the right to control the crime scene.
That's correct.
All right. Now, where in the regulations is it provided that the watch commander will go upon the crime scene after it's been secured and while waiting for detectives? Is there anything in the manual about that?
Not that I know of.
How often have you done it?
Every time I've secured a crime scene?
Okay. Well, my understanding is you were told the crime scene was secure before you got there.
Yes, I was.
Experience would teach that any time you walk upon the ground, you may affect what's already there, right?
No, not in this case. I was careful where I walked.
You
I was
were careful
watching.
where you walked.
Yes.
You know what a footprint looks like?
Yes, sir.
You do. Can it be seen with the naked eye?
Yes.
All footprints can be seen with the naked eye?
Well, if they're a footprint, if they're visible, they can be.
Don't you know that many footprints can't be seen until they're dusted with powder?
Overruled. Overruled.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Did you know that some footprints can't be seen except when shown with an oblique light?
Argumentative.
Overruled.
I suppose that's possible. Yeah.
Have you ever heard that in all of your training in the 300 homicide scenes you've been at?
Yes.
Okay. Now, having that in mind, at the time you were there, it occurred to you that a footprint left on the hard surface and not visible to the naked eye could be disrupted by you walking around those bodies?
No.
Did not. All right. As you walked down the back alley, from the alley behind the house toward Bundy, until you saw bloody footprints and turned around and backed out, had you seen anything of significance?
Yes, I had.
What had you seen before you turned around?
There were some blood droplets out behind the garage.
Okay. Now, did that give you reason to suspect that maybe one or more of the perpetrators had used that means to exit the premises?
Yes.
And when you saw the blood drops, you nonetheless continued down the walkway, correct?
Yes, I did.
And perhaps in the course of it, obliterated some of those footprints the naked eye can't see. True?
I don't believe I did that.
All right. You say you don't believe that you did.
No.
Would you explain to the jury how you could not believe that you obliterated something that you couldn't see in the first place?
Because I was careful where I walked.
What difference would that make if there were a dust residue footprint on the walkway?
Objection.
Now we're arguing.
Hmm?
We're arguing now.
Okay. If you're careful where you walk, what does that mean? That you avoid stepping on things of significance?
That's correct.
Okay. And if something significant can't be seen, can you avoid stepping on it?
If I can't see it, no.
All right, thank you. Is it your experience from being involved as a law enforcement officer in a great many homicides? Strike that out. Do you normally get to the scene before the detectives?
Yes.
And so there generally in each homicide that you investigate as a watch commander at least will be a period where you have the responsibility. True?
Would you repeat that, sir?
Yes. In the average homicide on which you work, let's say in the past 5 or 10 years, is there generally a period of time after the patrolmen arrive and before the detectives arrive when you, the watch commander, a sergeant, will be in charge of the crime scene?
Yes, there is.
Among the objectives of the police department when a homicide occurs that they have been unable to prevent, and prevention is the first objective, isn't it? Correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, certainly. What's that? Is it not fair to say that they are about equally important, Sergeant Rossi?
Yes.
Because to identify the guilty person in a homicide, it is often necessary to exclude other possible suspects. True?
True.
Now, in that respect, is it fair to say that time of death is an absolutely critical factor in solving a homicide?
I think that's very important.
Yes. And it can be controlling, correct?
Yes.
Once you know the time of death, it becomes much easier to exclude people who were elsewhere. True?
I can't accurately testify to that. I'm not a homicide investigator.
Well, I understand that, but as a matter of sheer logic,
Objections argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustain.
strike it out. As a matter of your experience, would you say that people who are not at a homicide scene at any time when it's going on probably didn't commit the homicide?
Well, that calls for a legal conclusion, counsel.
Does?
We have the law of aiding and abetting in this state.
Oh, no, I said commit.
And/or
Not assist.
conspiracy, sure.
All right.
Trust me, it's a legal conclusion.
Okay. Is it important to know the whereabouts of possible suspects at the time of death as it is established in the investigation?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you, at the time you arrived at the crime scene, have any brackets? That is to say, the last time the victims could have been alive and the last time, or the time they were known to be dead.
I didn't have that information.
All right. Well, you had this information, that some witnesses at the scene had called the police,
Objection, Your Honor. Can we approach?
but to strike it out. Strike it out.
Withdraw it.
What did you learn about the discovery of the bodies as to time?
The only thing I knew about time is when,
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Overruled. This is not a fact in dispute, counsel.
the only thing I knew about time was when my officers arrived, the first arriving officers found the victims.
Okay.
Is that what you meant?
Yes. And they told you there were witnesses there who discovered the bodies, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that this was all within a few minutes?
Yes.
All right. So as you sat there as watch commander, did you assume that you had a couple of bodies in your hand that might have been killed as late as midnight, thereabouts?
I didn't assume anything about time, sir, at that point.
Okay. But you did know they were dead by the time they were reported as such?
Yes, I did.
As to when they were last alive, did you hear anything that night from Officer Risky about ice cream?
Yes, I
What
did.
can you tell us about ice cream? What does it do when it's outside the refrigerator?
It melts.
That depends a little bit on the ambient temperature as to the rate at which it melts, right?
Yes?
And the kind of ice cream that's melting.
I can't testify to the type of ice cream. I don't know.
You're not an expert on melting rates?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Did Officer Risky tell you that he had discovered in the home of the female victim some partially melted ice cream?
At one point that evening, he did, yes.
And did that give you any idea as to what the brackets were around the period during which the homicide could have been committed?
No, it didn't.
So, for all you knew at that point, it could have been much earlier, the previous day, June 12th, that the victim was last seen alive, right?
I wasn't given time of death any kind of a thought, sir.
Understand that. You were given a time when everybody knew they were dead. I'm asking you, were you given any information as to when they were last seen or heard as being alive?
No.
Okay. The broader that time can be, the more important the medical and scientific evidence is in establishing time of death. Would you agree with that?
Objection, Your Honor.
Argumentative. Yes, it is. It calls for speculation. It's beyond the scope of this witness's testimony. This is something you can cover with another witness.
I understand.
Thank you.
I think you told us some time ago that you were aware that establishing time of death could be very important to an investigation.
Yes, I did.
And I think you've also told us that for a period of time, from 1:25 until 2:10, you were the person in charge of the scene
In charge of securing the scene, yes.
and in charge of the case until the detectives
No, I was
arrived,
not
right?
in charge of the case, sir.
No?
No.
You had no obligation to take any steps to either find the killers or call for additional help.
Not at that point. My obligation was to make sure that crime scene was protected.
Is it the policy of your department not to let anyone call for a coroner or technicians until the detectives get there?
Generally, that's a detective's advice, yes.
Is there any case in Los Angeles where the coroner is not called after murder occurs that you know of?
Not that I know of, no.
Do you think there is any risk whatsoever in not calling the coroner promptly?
Objection again, this calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Did you know his number?
The coroner's number?
Objection, this is irrelevant.
Overruled.
Argumentative.
Overruled.
I don't know it by heart, but I had access to it.
Could you have reached the coroner's office if
Yes.
you wanted to?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that at no time did you attempt to do that?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, I think you've described for us the places that you went before Detectives Phillips and Furman arrived at about 10 minutes after 2 that morning.
Yes.
Is that the first time you saw them that day,
Is that the first time I saw the detectives? Yes, it is.
on June 13th?
Yes, sir.
Had you seen them on June 12th?
I don't remember if I did.
Okay. Did they arrive together in the same vehicle?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember where they parked?
Yes, I do.
Now, had you the slightest idea when they arrived who the other victim, that is to say the male victim, was?
No, sir, I didn't.
Do you know if any efforts had been made to identify that victim?
No.
Had anyone taken down the numbers of automobiles parked in the vicinity on the chance that the victim may have driven to the scene?
Yes.
Had they been run through the central computer to identify the registered owners?
I don't believe so at that point.
Had not been done by
No.
2:10 a.m.
Not that I know of.
Okay. Do you know whether or not, by the way, how long did you spend inside the home at 875 South Bundy?
I never went inside.
You never went inside.
No, sir.
Did you ask for a description of what was inside from any of the officers who had been through it?
No, I didn't.
Did you ever learn whether or not there was a list in the kitchen of all the important numbers, phone numbers, police, fire, relatives, etc.?
No, I didn't.
You ever ask?
No, I didn't ask.
Okay. What was the very first thing that the two detectives did when they arrived and after you told them what you had seen when you went onto the crime scene?
They viewed the victims.
Well, do you know what their purpose was in doing that?
To take a look at the immediate crime scene.
Now, what path did they take to get from the sidewalk where I presume they started to the scene inside the gate? Do you know?
They took the same path that I had taken.
So if Risky took that path and you took it, and now the two detectives taken it, had anyone else taken it in the interim?
Sergeant Kuhn?
Sergeant Kuhn. How about Captain Zielman from the fire department?
He wasn't there when I was there.
Never was?
No.
Hadn't he already come and gone?
I believe so, yes.
Oh, and he was there to assure that the bodies were dead.
Yes.
Okay, and had done that.
As far as I know.
All right.
Objection, I call for speculation, hearsay,
Overruled.
personal knowledge.
Do you know how he got from the sidewalk to the crime scene?
Who's he?
Captain Zielman, Your Honor.
He'd come and gone. How does he know?
Someone may have told him.
Hearsay and speculation. Next question.
Okay. Do you know whether or not he had walked the same path that you walked?
Objection, that assumes back on evidence that you
Overruled.
walked the building.
A more artfully phrased question. You can answer the question.
Please,
You know.
please repeat it.
Do you know whether or not he had walked from the sidewalk to the crime scene on the same path that you and Risky and Kuhn had walked?
Objection calls for hearsay and assumes that's not evidence. This witness said he came a month before he got there. How do you know? Only by hearsay.
Question is, do you know? Overruled. Do you
No,
know?
No, sir, I don't know.
Next question.
Okay. Did Phillips and Furman walk together up that same path?
Yes, they did.
Can you now remember the nature of the surface of the earth over which all of you walked that morning?
It was a form of grass, as I recall.
Wasn't it soft loam in which plants were growing?
There were plants, ground cover type plants, yes.
Now, you told us earlier that in order to be sure that you didn't disturb any evidence, you took your flashlight and walked up the path, making sure there were no footprints there that you would step on. Do you remember that?
Making sure there was no evidence
Footprints would be evidence,
of any kind, yes.
or any other evidence.
Correct.
Did you see everybody else do that as they went up the path?
Yes, sir.
Took the flashlight?
Yes.
Now, you said that when you walked up the path, you didn't see Officer Risky's footprints,
No, I didn't.
and you didn't see Sergeant Kuhn's footprints. Well, when Detectives Phillips and Furman walked up that path, did they turn to you and say, Sergeant Rossi, there are footprints here?
No, they didn't.
Did not? Okay. They continued up to the scene and inspected the area and the bodies, right?
Yes.
Where did they next go, or either one of them?
They both then came back down to the sidewalk to where I was.
Okay. Now, at this point, did any of you look for human footprints as opposed to paw prints around the area of the sidewalk and the street and so forth?
Yes.
Where did you look?
Right around as we walked on the sidewalk, we kept looking with our flashlights.
And did you further look in the shrubbery where you had walked, parallel to the sidewalk, to see if anyone had left in that fashion?
I didn't personally, but Detective Phillips and Furman were using their flashlight in various locations in the immediate area.
Now, where did you see them inspect while you were there?
Around where the victims were lying and in the grassy area. At one point, one of them walked over to the sidewalk area that is adjacent to the walkway and shined his light.
Okay. Just yes or no, did Mr. Furman say whether or not he knew the female victim?
No, sir, he didn't.
Did he say whether or not he'd ever met her or her ex-husband before?
Not to me.
No discussion along those lines?
No.
Okay. What means of communication were Detectives Phillips and Furman using in your presence that morning?
Sustained.
Did either one of them have a cellular phone?
Yes, Detective Phillips had one.
Did you observe him using it to call other people?
Yes.
And were you standing close enough to learn who he purported to be calling?
Yes, on one call I did.
Which was that?
When he called robbery homicide?
Okay. That was pursuant to the message you gave him from the chief saying he wanted robbery homicide, which meant the detectives downtown in on this case, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you tell him why the chief said that he thought that would be appropriate?
No, I just told him that was what the chief requested.
That was an order,
Yes.
and it was non-discretionary?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Pursuant to which Phillips made the call.
Yes, he did.
Can you tell us about what time, according to your best recollection, after 2:10 a.m. when he arrived, Detective Phillips called robbery homicide?
Well, it was after we walked to the rear of the location, so I would say probably 15 minutes after they arrived.
Okay. So they arrive at the curb, go up the little path and look at the scene, come back out, shine their lights in the foliage, and then go around Dorothy up the alley to the rear gate.
That's correct, yes.
All right. Now, did they then go in the house?
Yes.
Did.
Yes, they did.
How long would you say they had been on the scene when they went into the house?
Oh, probably 15 or 20 minutes.
Had they, before going into the house, ventured up the walkway inside the rear gate?
Did they go up the walkway prior to going in the house? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
How long did they spend going up the walkway toward the crime scene from the alley and through the gate? How much time?
It was just Detective Phillips and I, and it was only probably about a minute.
Well, did you venture as far as you had on your first trip with Risky?
Yes.
And did you stop in the same place?
Yes, sir.
And did you point out to Detective Phillips the visible footprints that you had noticed before?
Yes, I did.
Did Detective Phillips say anything to you about wiping out footprints that weren't visible?
No.
Did not. You just walked up there. How many feet would you say it was from the gate to where you stopped?
Oh, probably 100 and... from where again? I'm sorry.
From the rear gate. You entered the rear gate, I take it.
Right.
You noticed blood drops there, then walked in. Did you notice them the second time?
Yes.
Did you point them out to Detective Phillips?
Are we talking about the blood drops or the footprints?
No, the blood drops near the gate.
Yes, I did.
All right. And then you walked up the walkway
Right.
that goes beside the house toward the crime scene.
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you know today what the total distance is between the gates?
No, I don't.
Any estimate?
110 feet?
Okay. What percentage of that distance would you say that you covered on these two occasions on foot?
Approximately 30 feet?
30.
30, 35 feet, yes.
Okay. So you didn't get up as far as the entry door off the walkway, is that right?
That's correct.
What was the other detective doing while you two were walking up the walkway?
Detective Furman?
Mm-hmm.
He remained behind the garage.
Doing what?
I don't know.
Well, did you see him looking over the Jeep?
No, I didn't.
You ever see anyone touch the Jeep?
No, I didn't.
You ever see anyone dust the Jeep?
No, sir.
Okay. During this first 15-minute period and before the call was placed by Phillips to robbery homicide, did you hear anyone call the coroner?
No, I did not.
Did not. Did you fellows discuss the wisdom of doing that?
It wasn't discussed with me, no.
Okay. Right. When did they enter the home, before or after the call downtown?
I believe it was before.
Okay. And they walked in through the garage?
That's correct.
Is that how they entered?
Yes.
You can enter through the garage or from the walkway, right?
Not the walkway.
Aren't there two doors into the home from the walkway?
The front of the house is, well, what walkway are we talking about?
The walkway I'm talking about runs gate to gate, the
I don't-
whole up and down.
I don't remember an entrance to the house there, no.
You don't?
No, sir.
Where was the entrance to the house that you could go in if you didn't want to enter through the garage?
I saw a front door that was on the Bundy side of the house.
Is there a
Which-
walkway parallel to Bundy?
Parallel to Bundy?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a walkway from the sidewalk up.
No, I understand that. Exclude, if you will, the walkway that runs gate to gate,
Okay.
up some steps, down some steps, and so forth.
Exclude that.
Exclude that.
Okay.
Are there any other walkways that give access to the home?
No?
Okay. So therefore, any doors at ground level that enter the home have to be adjacent to that walkway, don't they?
To the walkway in the front. Now, I thought you were talking about the walkway on the side of the house.
The walkway on the front, starting at the gate,
Right.
runs beside the house all the way to the walkway in the back, doesn't it, Sergeant?
It also leads off to the front door.
And you say that's not all one walkway.
Well, it leads off, you have to turn into the door to get to it.
All right, let's move on. They went in through the garage in any event.
That's correct.
You never entered the house, and you may not even know where the doors are. Is that fair?
I know where the front door is because I saw it from the front of the house.
Do you know if there are any other doors?
No.
Did they both enter through the garage and leave through the garage?
Yes, they did.
How long were they in the house?
Not long, probably 5 to 10 minutes.
Had you discussed with the detectives prior to their going into the house the wisdom of trying to locate Mr. Simpson to warn him?
No, I didn't discuss that with the detectives.
And they didn't discuss it in your presence, I take it.
That's correct.
It was not a topic of urgency as you now recall it.
We didn't discuss it.
Okay. When they left the house, did they tell you that they had found a listing of numbers in the kitchen?
No, sir.
Did they tell you that the telephones had speed dials with Dad?
No, they did not.
Did not. All right. Can you recall anything they told you of note about what they found inside the house as detectives?
No, they didn't tell me anything about the house.
You knew that Officer Risky had walked through the house, right?
Before I got there, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you ever issue any orders to protect footprints in the carpeting?
No.
Do you know what those are?
Objection, Your Honor, these questions go to
Overruled.
Do you know what they are, sir?
Do I know what footprints in a
Do
carpeting?
you know whether or not a carpet can yield footprints under certain
Yes.
conditions? Do you
Yes,
know
it
that
can.
they can't be seen with the naked eye generally?
No, I've seen footprints in carpet with my naked eye.
And do you know that there are some that can't be seen with the naked eye?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
You never heard of that?
No.
Okay. All right. Is it fair to say that no steps were taken to protect the carpeting in case the footprints of somebody relevant might already be there?
I don't know what steps were taken inside the house, sir.
Sorry, let me rephrase it. Is it fair to say that you know of no steps that were taken by you or anyone else to protect the carpeting in the house?
I don't know what steps were taken in the house.
Okay. Were any steps taken to protect items like the telephones from fingerprints?
I don't know.
When the detectives came back out through the garage, were you standing? Excuse me.
Parker.
What did you do while they were inside the house, Sergeant?
I made myself available in front of the house on Bundy at Dorothy.
Then I take it you never saw them come back out through the garage?
Excuse me, when you said when they were in the house, I beg your pardon, I just stayed behind the garage in the area back there.
Was there any reason that you didn't accompany them into the house?
I didn't see any need, or I didn't see it necessary for me to go in the house.
Is that because from the time of their arrival on, the detecting was left totally up to them?
That's correct.
Okay. After they came out of the house, what did they next do?
I believe that's when Detective Phillips, or when I discussed with Detective Phillips about calling robbery homicide per the order of Deputy Chief Frankel.
All right. This was 15 minutes after their arrival?
15 or 20 minutes, I would say, yeah.
Okay. Now, is promptness to the crime scene important in homicide cases?
I would think so,
Your experience has taught you that it is, right?
yes.
Okay. Was there any reason that you waited 15 or 20 minutes to pass along the chief's order?
Perfectly honest, I didn't think of it until then.
The chief gave you an order at 1:15 a.m. and you forgot it at 2:10?
I didn't forget it, I just didn't think of it until I told him.
Fair to say that it slipped your memory for a bit.
There's a lot of things going on, yes, could
Okay.
have.
Can you remember what it is that jogged it back?
No, I just remembered and I told him,
Like that,
yes.
all right? And did the Detective Phillips call rather promptly after you relayed the direction you'd been given?
Yes, sir.
Now, are you familiar with the detectives in the downtown robbery homicide unit?
No, I'm not.
Did you know any of them before this case?
No.
Are they generally the most senior and experienced in the LAPD?
I would say generally.
And did the chief tell you that's why he wanted them called in this case?
The chief indicated to me they had more resources.
Okay. Did the chief indicate that he also wanted them there because he anticipated the degree of press attention that would accompany this case?
I don't remember if he indicated that at all.
Okay. Now, a Detective Roberts arrived apparently at Bundy shortly after Detectives Furman and Phillips. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Who is Detective Roberts? Can you tell us?
That was the first night I met Detective Roberts. I believe he's a West LA detective.
His headquarters is in your station?
As far as I know.
Do you know how long he'd been attached there?
No, sir, I don't.
Do you know what his grade was?
No, I didn't.
Do you know why he was summoned to Bundy along with the two that you had brought there?
No, I didn't know.
At about the time Detective Roberts arrived, it appears that Lieutenant Spangler arrived. That square with your recollection?
I think they were pretty close, yes.
Well, about 20 minutes after
Yeah.
Detectives Furman and Phillips arrived, or about 2:30?
That sounds reasonable, yes.
Okay. And Lieutenant Spangler ordinarily would have been the senior person there, correct?
That's correct.
Now, can you explain to me what the relative authority was, since Phillips at about 2:30 was calling downtown for those detectives, and the chief detective from West LA was arriving on the scene? What's the pecking order at this point?
I don't understand the question.
All right, let me rephrase it. We have Phillips and Furman in charge, they're the detectives there first, right?
Right.
We have them told by you that the chief wants them not to be in charge, but to bring in the detectives from downtown.
Right.
And Detective Phillips, following that direction, calls downtown and relays that request, right?
That's right.
The chief would have no power from West LA to order them out there if they didn't want to come, would he?
The chief would, I don't understand that, sir.
Chief Franklin couldn't order downtown detectives to come to Brentwood, could he?
Well, certainly he could.
He could? The person you talked with?
Chief Frankel could have ordered them, sir.
All right. Does he have authority over all the detectives in the force?
Well, yes, he does. He's a much higher rank, and so,
Fine.
yeah.
Okay. So this wasn't optional as to them either, the detectives downtown that were receiving the call.
Right.
They were directed to come. True?
That's true.
All right. Do you know what Robert's rank is?
No, sir, I don't.
Did you see him do anything when he arrived?
No, I didn't.
Did you see him remain there as long as you were there?
I believe he did.
Did you see him talking with Detectives Furman and Phillips at any time?
Yes, I did.
Now, did you spend most of the time between 2:10 and about 4:20 or 30 in the company of Detectives Furman and Phillips?
No, I was in the street talking with my captain after I returned to the front of the condo.
Okay, this was Captain Dial.
Yes.
And when did she arrive?
I don't remember the exact time. I'd have to look on the log.
You don't recall at the moment?
I don't recall.
Would about 10 minutes after Detective Roberts and Lieutenant Spangler seem about right?
I believe she got there a little bit after Lieutenant Spangler, yes.
Okay, so if she got there at 2:40, would that seem to be square with your recollection?
Sounds fair.
All right. She is your direct superior, whereas the detectives are not. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
And if you had any direction to get, it would be from Captain Dial and not from the detectives on matters unrelated to the crime scene itself. Is that fair?
Unrelated to the crime scene?
Yes.
That's correct.
All right. As far as bringing officers to the scene, setting up patrols, roadblocks, all points bulletins, things like that, would that be within her purview to order?
Yes, it would.
How long did you spend talking with with Captain Dial?
I was probably talking with Captain Dial for about a half an hour.
Since you had arrived at about 1:25, 1:30, and by the way, the West LA station at, is it 1363 Butler Ave?
1663.
1663 Butler Ave is less than 2 miles from 875 South Bundy, isn't it?
I think it's a little farther than that. I think it's closer to about 5 miles.
Isn't it about a mile, 4,000 feet?
It's 5,280 feet.
No, isn't it about a mile and 4,000 feet? If you know.
Say again, bear with me, sir. I've been working since 10 o'clock last night. What was the question?
I understand, so have I, waiting for you, so we're even. Now, isn't the distance less than 10,000 feet from Butler to Bundy?
I don't know.
Okay. Didn't you get there within a few minutes when you left at 1:25 after talking with Captain Dial on the phone?
It took about 7 minutes, as I recall.
7 minutes, okay. If you went 5 miles in 7 minutes, you'd have been pulled over, wouldn't you?
Probably not. I'm in a black and white.
Okay. You mean nobody arrests you for speeding?
I hope not.
All right. Did you have a siren on?
No, sir.
When was the first time, after you arrived at the scene, that you saw somebody taking photographs?
I don't recall anybody taking photographs while I was there.
Do you know a photographer named Rokhar, R-O-K-H-A-R?
No, I don't.
Can you tell us whether or not photographer Rokhar arrived at the scene at 3:25?
No, I cannot.
If the crime log says that he did, is it likely that he did, this being an official record?
Yes.
Okay. So, you did not leave until, as I understand this log, 4:10,
That's correct.
and went back.
Yes.
So if Rokhar was there firing flashbulbs for half an hour before you left, you never noticed it? Is that right?
I did not notice it. That's correct.
Okay. It was still pretty dark at that hour, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Do you remember what time sunrise was on June 13th, 1994?
No, I don't.
What was the temperature that night? Do you recall that?
I remember it as being relatively warm.
60 degrees?
That's
better?
That's reasonable, yes.
Okay. All right. I believe that you said one of the downtown detectives, that being Detective Philip Van Adder, arrived just as you were departing Bundy.
I don't believe I said that. I remember him arriving, but I did stay for some time after he showed up.
If the crime log has him in at 4:05 and you out at 4:10, does that square with your recollection?
Is that what it-
5 minutes of talk?
It seems like he was there longer, but if that's what it says, that's probably correct.
Well, the crime log is not infallible, is it?
It's only as accurate as the person doing it.
Okay, which you understand in this case was an officer named Cummings.
Yes, sir.
Now, did you have some conversation with Detective Van Adder?
No, I didn't.
Did you observe him talking with anyone?
Yeah, I saw him talking with Detective Phillips.
Did you observe him to go upon the crime scene, as you had done?
No,
How close to the crime scene did you see him go?
I don't recall.
Where was the conversation taking place between Detective Phillips and Van Adder?
On Bundy, at the intersection of Bundy and Dorothy?
Down at the corner we've looked at in the photographs?
That's correct.
Is that the closest you saw Detective Van Adder get to the crime scene?
Yes, sir.
up until the arrival of Detective Van Adder at 4:05 a.m., to your knowledge, had any effort whatsoever been made to contact Mr. O.J. Simpson?
Not to my knowledge.
Up until the arrival of Detective Van Adder at 4:05 a.m., to your knowledge, had any effort been made to call a coroner to the scene?
Not to my knowledge.
How about criminalists and technicians who take footprints, fingerprints, etc.?
Objection. You asked 3 questions, including this one, which is all beyond the scope of this witness's knowledge. He's already testified, it's not his job.
Hold. Do you know if any of those people had been called before you departed?
No, sir, I don't know.
And when Detective Van Adder arrived, did you see him take any steps in that direction?
No, I don't recall.
All right. And my understanding of your testimony on direct is that you went back to your station, number one, because there was no further need for your services, and number two, because you had other things to worry about as watch commander.
Yes, sir.
Fair statement?
Yes.
But you were still ready, willing, able, and available to assist in this case if called upon to do so.
Yes, sir.
Had you been given any specific instructions in that regard by Captain Dial?
No, I was not.
Okay. Did she leave the scene prior to the time that you did, if you know?
No, I left before her.
You did?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know of any reason that, as to both Lieutenant Spangler and Captain Dial, their time of departure, according to crime log, is unknown?
Please repeat the question.
Yes. Do you know of any reason that the time of departure of those 2 officers, the lieutenant and the captain, is unknown, according to crime log?
No, I don't know.
Objection. Objection. That assumes facts not known as not necessarily unknown.
Overruled, according to the crime law.
Right.
Overruled.
Did you personally see anybody leave Bundy with the understanding that they were going to Rockingham?
No.
Prior to the time that you left and went back to the station, had anybody asked you to try to assist them in finding out where Mr. Simpson resided?
No, sir.
What did you do when you got back to the station?
Started to do some paperwork.
Related to this case?
Unrelated.
Unrelated.
Yes.
Did you write any reports in this case?
I wrote a watch commander's log.
Okay. Did you write any notes at the scene?
No, sir.
Did you see any detectives writing notes at the scene?
Yes, I did.
Which ones?
Detective Phillips.
Okay. What about the others? Roberts, Furman, and Adams?
And I don't recall.
Is it true that Detective Lang had not arrived prior to the time you departed?
The name again, sir?
Detective Tom Lang from downtown?
That's correct. He had not arrived.
You did not see him at any time that night?
No, I didn't.
All right. Now, what time did you get back to the station?
It was right around 5 o'clock.
And you had been there about 13 minutes when somebody asked you to call West Tech, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you made that call on a phone that has a tape attached to it at 5:13 a.m. True?
I believe it was not. My phone wasn't taped. No.
No. I said on a phone that had a tape, in this case belonging to West Tech.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You have since seen a transcript
Yes, sir.
of your conversations.
That's correct.
Right. Now, my recollection is that your first inquiry when you got hold of West Tech was, is Mr. Simpson in town?
Yes.
And West Tech said they thought he was?
The first. That's not what I. You say if you're talking about the first
Well, I'm
contact.
trying to
I had
avoid
with-
going through every
Oh, okay.
little step that you went through in
Okay.
direct. Get to the meat of it.
Okay.
First of all, did you ever inquire of West Tech as to whether they, as a matter of common practice, had any knowledge of whether Mr. Simpson was in town?
Yes, I did.
And what did they tell you?
They said they didn't know if he was in town.
No. The question, perhaps, as His Honor would say, was inartfully phrased. Before relying on West Tech's response that they didn't know if he was in town, did you try to establish whether or not they should have known if he was in town?
No.
No. So you didn't know at that point whether their knowledge of his whereabouts was even relevant or not?
Objection. Open speculation.
Sustained.
Did you have any reason to believe that West Tech, the security outfit whose plaque was on the grounds at the Mr. Simpson's home,
No, I didn't
had
know.
any practice of keeping track of it?
No, I didn't know.
Okay. When you talked to number 48 or wherever it was, they said they didn't know whether he was in town or not. Did you then inquire as to whether they had any means of finding out?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And were they able to refer you to any logs that they kept or other routine pieces of paperwork within their office that would indicate whether their clients were at home or elsewhere?
No, they didn't.
They indeed indicated what they would have to do is the same thing you would have to do, and that's call on the telephone or pay a visit, right?
The operator 48 said he had some extra numbers that he couldn't give me, but he would check them for me.
Okay. Well, you, I believe, at this point, told him you had an emergency on your hands, didn't you?
I told him the detectives were requesting. I never did tell him it was an emergency.
You didn't?
At one point I did, but it was later on in the conversation.
Why did you, after 5 o'clock in the morning, having not lifted a finger to notify Mr. Simpson for over 4 hours, suddenly declare an emergency?
Actually, this is an argument of harassing this witness. He just asked questions about it.
Just overruled. You can answer the question.
Please repeat it.
Why did you declare an emergency 5 hours after it apparently arose?
Objection, that seems that's not evidence. When Detective Van Adder...
Overruled. He's already testified he did use the word emergency later in the conversation.
I didn't feel I was declaring an emergency. They asked me if it was an emergency, and I said, yes, it is.
Why did you use the word?
I didn't use the word. They did. They said, is it an emergency? And I said, yes, it is.
Well, that adopted the word they used in their question, right?
I thought it was important. Yes.
Intended to convey to them that you had an emergency on your hands.
Yes,
They were relying on your judgment, not
Yes.
theirs, in the use of that word, right?
that's correct.
All right. And the reason you used the word was to get them to circumvent their own rules and give you some numbers, true?
No, sir.
That's...
Overruled.
No.
Question and answer will stand. He said no.
Did you, after being told that 48, or whomever you were speaking with on the phone, didn't have the authority to give you the numbers, ask that you be given the numbers anyway?
No.
Never did.
No, I didn't.
Did you ask that a supervisor be called so that the numbers could be given to you? In West Tech?
I asked that a supervisor respond to the location on Rockingham.
Okay. Did you get a phone number at some point once they found their client in their records?
No, sir. Never did.
I never did. You have told us then that at around 5:30, 5:40, it was determined by people at the scene that a forcible entry might be necessary.
Yes.
All right. Now, what reason were you given that a forcible entry at the Rockingham residence of O.J. Simpson might be necessary at 5:30 on June 13th?
Detective Phillips told me on the telephone that they had found some evidence at the Rockingham location that may indicate that there could be another crime scene or a victim inside that location.
And did he tell you what it was?
No, sir.
Okay. And he said, in essence, they might have to break down the door.
If they couldn't get a key, that's correct.
Okay. Now, did they tell you what efforts they had made to attract the attention of anyone who might be resident within the premises?
No, they didn't.
Like turning on a siren?
No,
Had anybody tried that, to your knowledge?
not that I know of.
And they didn't know whether anybody was home or not at home, did they?
I don't know if they did or not, sir.
Who did you understand, based on what you were being told by Phillips, who did you understand was present at that time when this move was being contemplated?
He never told me. I never asked.
Well, did he indicate that he needed more help from any of your people?
No, he didn't.
Did he indicate whether it was himself or someone else who would come upon this evidence that necessitated a forced entry?
No, he didn't tell me that.
You wanted a West Tech person, in the event forced entry was necessary, to be present.
To be present, yes, sir.
Okay. And what was the purpose in that?
To witness, if they had a forced entry.
Witness what?
The forced entry?
And what could the West Tech person, in your judgment, contribute to the matter by being present while you broke down the door?
The fact that they have the security contract, I think that's reasonable.
All right. Well, was there any thought on your part that they might be able to find a way in without a key and without breaking down the door by virtue of their position with respect to their client, Mr. Simpson.
West Head?
Yeah.
No, I didn't give that any thought.
Okay. As of the time that the door was in jeopardy, and you were trying to get a West Tech man on the scene at Rockingham, to your knowledge, had anyone called the coroner to be present?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you know whether or not there is a legal requirement obligating police officers generally, including you, to see that that is done within certain limits?
No, I don't.
Based on your understanding of police practice, does anyone have the authority to tell another officer, we will not call the coroner in this case? Not now. Does anyone have that authority in the LAPD?
I would think the detective in charge of the case could make that judgment, certainly.
And for how many days does he have the authority to keep the coroner away from the scene, Sergeant, if you know?
I have no idea.
Can you think of any reason why at 6:30 p.m. your correspondent by cellular phone, Detective Phillips, would tell another, let's not call the coroner in this case, as a special favor? Can you think of that?
30 p.m.
Sustain.
Sorry, a.m.
Sustain.
Did you know that happened?
Rephrase the question.
Yes. Can you think of any reason why Detective Phillips would tell someone to prevent the coroner from coming to the scene after 6 a.m. on the morning of the homicide?
Sustain.
Okay. Do you know whether or not that was done?
Overruled. Do you know?
No, sir, I don't know.
Next question.
As you sit there today, you're hearing for the first time from me that that may have occurred. Is that your statement on your own?
Sustain.
All right. Are you familiar, Sergeant, with the LAPD manual?
Somewhat.
Somewhat. Do you visit it from time to time to remind yourself of the rules and regulations that govern your conduct?
Yes, sir.
Do you take refresher courses that enable you to remember what some of those rules and regulations are?
Occasionally.
All right. You remember the last one you took?
No.
How many volumes are there of the LAPD manual, if you recall?
5.
Current version.
5.
You have any idea what is contained in Volume 1, Section 210.46?
No, sir.
Misconduct of officers. Are you familiar with that, sir?
Objection. Overruled.
I have read it.
Is there not imposed upon you and every officer in the LAPD a duty to report misconduct by others?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, that's a good time to break if it's convenient for the court.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the afternoon. Sergeant Rossi, you can step down. You're ordered to return here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Please don't discuss your testimony with anybody else except for the lawyers. All right? See you tomorrow morning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the afternoon. Please remember my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't let anybody talk to you or communicate with you about the case. Do not conduct any deliberations on the matter till it has been submitted to you for your final judgment. All right. As to the attorneys, I'd like you to stay. We have a few matters we need to discuss. Let's clear the jury, please.